The Weight of Crumbs, a story of hidden hunger and quiet grace. Act 1. The Setting of the Soul. I've been teaching for 23 years now. 23 years of chalk dust and fluorescent lights, of bells that ring every 47 minutes like clockwork prayers, of faces that blur together like watercolors left out in the rain. You'd think by now I'd have seen everything. You'd think the hallways couldn't surprise me anymore. But that's the thing about this job nobody tells you. It's not the curriculum that keeps you up at night. It's not the standardized tests or the parent conferences or the endless stack of papers bleeding red ink on your kitchen table. It's the children. It's always been the children. The ones who slip through the cracks when you're not looking. The ones who carry weights you can't see. Jefferson Middle School sits on the corner of 5th and Maple in a part of town that used to mean something. The brick facade still holds echoes of better days. You can see it in the carved cornerstone, 1952, back when this neighborhood hummed with factory whistles and front porch suppers. Now the factories are husks, the porches sag, and the children who walk through our doors carry a different kind of history in their backpacks. My classroom is on the 2nd floor, room 214, wedged between the gymnasium and the music room. On quiet mornings, before the buses arrive, I can hear Mrs. Patterson warming up the choir. Amazing grace floating through cinder-block walls. It's become a kind of meditation for me, those few minutes of stillness before the flood. I teach 7th grade English, Shakespeare and sentence diagrams, creative writing on Fridays when we're all too tired to pass another paragraph. The kids call me Mr. Holloway, though some of the bolder ones have started calling me Mr. H when they think I'm not listening. I don't mind. There are worse things to be called in a middle school. It was October when I first noticed Marcus Cole. Not that I hadn't seen him before. He'd been in my 3rd period class since September, a quiet boy who sat in the back row near the window. But there's a difference between seeing and noticing, between a name in a grade book and a person whose story you suddenly can't stop reading. He was small for his age, 12, but built like a child of 9 or 10. Thin arms that seemed too long for his body, wrists that poked out from sleeves that were always a season behind. His clothes were clean but worn, the kind of clean that comes from careful hands and cold water, not from expensive detergents. His sneakers had been white once, maybe, in another lifetime. What caught my attention wasn't his appearance. I've taught hundreds of kids whose families struggled. What caught my attention was his stillness. Most 7th graders are kinetic energy barely contained, all elbows and restless feet, passing notes and stealing glances at their phones. Marcus sat like a stone in a river, letting the current flow around him, his eyes fixed on something beyond the window, beyond the parking lot, beyond anything I could see. The October light that afternoon was doing that thing it does in the Midwest, turning everything amber and gold, making even our tired schoolyard look like something from a painting. The leaves on the old oak outside my window were dropping one by one, slow and deliberate, like they'd finally made peace with falling. I was collecting papers from the morning's quiz when I noticed Marcus's desk was empty. His backpack was there, a faded blue JanSport with a broken zipper, but Marcus was gone. It wasn't unusual for kids to slip out to the restroom without asking, though I preferred they did. What was unusual was the length of his absence. 5 minutes stretched to 10, 10 to 15. The bell rang before he returned. Students shuffled out in their predictable chaos, and I stood at my door watching them scatter down the hallway like leaves caught in a wind. And there, at the far end of the corridor, I saw Marcus. He was coming from the direction of the cafeteria, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. His shoulders were hunched in that particular way children have when they're trying to make themselves invisible. He didn't see me watching. Or maybe he did, and chose not to acknowledge it. Either way, Something about the way he moved stayed with me through the rest of that day, through the afternoon classes and the faculty meeting, and the long drive home through streets that were starting to forget the sun. I'd been a teacher long enough to know when something was wrong. The question was whether it was the kind of wrong I could help with, or the kind that required me to step carefully, to watch and wait, to be patient with truths that weren't ready to be spoken. Act 2. The first turning of the trail. The cafeteria at Jefferson Middle School smells exactly like every school cafeteria you've ever been in. That particular mixture of industrial cleaner and overcooked vegetables, of plastic trays and milk gone slightly warm. It's a smell that triggers something primal in anyone who survived the American public school system, part nostalgia, part survival instinct. I started taking my lunches there, which wasn't unusual in itself. Teachers often rotated cafeteria duty, supervising the controlled chaos of 300 adolescents trying to eat and socialize in 22 minutes. But I wasn't on duty. I was watching. The first time I saw it, I almost missed it. Marcus was standing in line, tray in hand, moving with the slow shuffle of the lunch queue. He reached the station where they kept the individually wrapped items, granola bars, apple slices in plastic cups, small bags of carrots. His hand moved so quickly, so practiced, that if you blinked, you'd swear nothing happened at all. One moment, empty pocket, the next moment a slight bulge in his jacket. A granola bar. He'd taken a granola bar. My first instinct was to look away, to pretend I hadn't seen it, because seeing it meant doing something about it, and doing something about it meant having a conversation I wasn't sure either of us was ready for. But I couldn't look away. Something in the way he did it, not furtive and guilty like most kids caught stealing, but mechanical, routine, like this was just another item on a checklist of survival, made me keep watching. Over the next week, I catalogued what I saw. 2 apples, 3 milk cartons, a package of crackers, a banana so bruised the lunch lady would have thrown it out anyway. Each item disappeared into that jacket with the same quiet efficiency. Each time, Marcus's face remained perfectly neutral, as if he were simply breathing, simply existing, simply doing what had to be done. I pulled his file from the counselor's office. June Chen had been the school counselor for almost as long as I'd been teaching, a small woman with sharp eyes and an endless supply of tissue boxes. She handed me the manila folder without asking why I wanted it. "Marcus Cole," she said, her voice carrying the weight of 1,000 similar folders. "4th school in 3 years. Mother works 2 jobs, night shift at the hospital, weekends at the Quick Mart on Route 9. Father's not in the picture. There's a younger brother, Jalen, 1st grade at Lincoln Elementary, and a grandmother who lives with them, but she's been in and out of the hospital. Diabetes, I think. Maybe something else." I thanked her and took the file back to my classroom, sat with it during my free period, reading between the lines of attendance records and transfer paperwork. The story assembled itself in pieces. An eviction notice in Gary, Indiana. A brief stay with relatives in Milwaukee. Then here, to this tired town where the rent was cheap and the schools were struggling, but at least the heat worked. His grades were adequate. Not stellar, not failing. The grades of a child who understood that school was something to endure rather than embrace. His teacher's comments were variations on a theme. Quiet. Keeps to himself. Polite but distant. The kind of words that slide off the page without leaving a mark. What the file didn't say was what I could see with my own eyes. The way Marcus lingered after lunch, waiting until most students had left before slipping out. The way his jacket pockets sagged with contraband calories. The way he never ate the food himself. Not a single bite during school hours. He was taking it home. That much was obvious. The question was why. I found my answer on a Thursday afternoon, the sky heavy with the threat of early snow. I'd stayed late to grade papers, the building quiet except for the distant hum of the cleaning crew's vacuum. I was walking to my car when I saw Marcus at the bus stop across the street. He wasn't alone. A small boy, 6, maybe 7, sat beside him on the bench. Same thin build, same careful stillness, same eyes that had seen too much too young. Jalen. The brother from the file. Marcus was pulling items from his jacket, one by one, like a magician revealing his tricks. The granola bar, an apple, a small carton of milk, somehow still cold. The little boy ate with the focused intensity of the truly hungry, not greedy, not rushed, but deliberate, savoring each bite as if it might be his last. And Marcus watched him with an expression I recognized immediately, because I'd seen it on my own father's face during the lean years of my childhood. Pride, love, and underneath it all, a terrible, grinding fear that tomorrow might not provide what today had given. I stood there in the October cold, my keys growing warm in my clenched fist, and I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been dormant for years, buried under lesson plans and staff meetings and the comfortable numbness of routine. Funny thing about teaching, you spend so much time trying to fill young minds with facts and figures, with dates and formulas, and the proper use of semicolons. You forget that sometimes the most important lesson isn't in any textbook. Sometimes it's standing right in front of you, sharing stolen food with his little brother at a bus stop, and you've been too blind to see it. Act a third, the hard miles. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I lay in my bed in my small apartment, staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios like a chess player calculating moves and counter-moves. If I reported Marcus, he'd face consequences, suspension, maybe expulsion. Another black mark on a record already spotted with the stains of circumstance. Another school that failed him. But if I did nothing, what then? He'd keep stealing, keep risking, keep carrying a burden no 12-year-old should carry. And sooner or later, someone else would notice. Someone who didn't know his story. Someone who saw theft instead of survival. The walls of my apartment felt thin that week. I could hear my neighbors moving through their lives, the couple upstairs arguing about bills, the elderly woman next door watching her game shows, the baby 2 floors down crying at 3 a.m. We were all so close to each other, separated by drywall and pride, each of us convinced our struggles were ours alone to bear. I thought about my own childhood, the years after my father lost his job at the plant, when dinner was sometimes just bread and government cheese, when my mother would tell us she'd already eaten even though we never saw her plate. I remembered the shame of it. The way poverty feels like a personal failure, even when you're too young to have failed at anything. What would I have wanted back then? What would have helped without humiliating? On Friday, I asked Marcus to stay after class. He approached my desk with the wariness of an animal who'd learned that human attention usually meant trouble. His eyes met mine for a moment before sliding away to focus on the stack of papers at my elbow. "Am I in trouble?" he asked. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling slightly at his sides. "No," I said, "not at all. I wanted to talk to you about something else." I'd rehearsed this conversation a dozen times in my head, but now that the moment had arrived, all my careful words scattered like startled birds. I took a breath. Started again. "Marcus, I've been teaching a long time, long enough to recognize when a student is carrying more than their backpack can hold." I paused, watching his face for any sign of understanding. "I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to get you in trouble. I'm here because I think maybe you could use someone in your corner." His jaw tightened. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The clock on the wall marked the seconds with its patient tick, tick, tick. Outside, the buses were loading, engines rumbling, children's voices rising and falling in their eternal chaos. "I don't know what you mean," he said finally. But his voice cracked on the last word, and I saw his armor start to slip. "I think you do," I said gently. "And I think you've been carrying this alone for a long time. Maybe too long." What happened next broke something inside me. Not the bad kind of breaking, the kind that lets light in. Marcus Cole, 12 years old, small for his age, quiet as a stone, began to cry. Not the dramatic sobs you see in movies, but the silent, shaking tears of someone who'd forgotten they were allowed to feel. The story came out in fragments, like a puzzle slowly assembling itself. His grandmother was back in the hospital, her kidneys this time failing faster than the doctors expected. His mother was working double shifts just to cover the medical bills, which meant she wasn't home to cook or shop or make sure there was food in the refrigerator. "Jalen doesn't understand why there's nothing to eat," Marcus said, his voice raw. "He's just a kid. He thinks if he's good enough, if he does his homework and cleans his room, everything will be okay. But it won't. It won't be okay, and I can't—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I can't let him go hungry. I won't." I handed him the tissue box from my desk. He took it without looking at me, wiping his face with the rough efficiency of someone uncomfortable with their own tears. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. "Since September," he admitted. "When Grandma first got sick, Mom tried to apply for food stamps, but there's some problem with the paperwork. Something about our address not matching their records. She keeps saying she'll fix it, but she doesn't have time, and I can't—" His voice broke again. "I can't watch Jalen go to bed hungry again. I just can't." I sat with that for a moment, let the weight of it settle into my bones. This child, because that's what he was, despite everything, still a child, had been stealing food not for himself, but for his little brother. Had been carrying the weight of his family's survival on shoulders too narrow for such burdens. Had been drowning in silence while we all walked past, too busy with our own lives to notice. "Marcus," I said finally, "I'm going to help you. Not because I feel sorry for you, because I don't. What you've been doing, taking care of your brother, carrying this weight, that's not something to pity. That's something to respect." I leaned forward, made sure he was looking at me. "But you shouldn't have to do it alone. No one should." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I hadn't seen before, a flicker of hope, small, uncertain, ready to be extinguished at the first sign of disappointment. But there. "You're not going to tell anyone?" he asked. "About the food?" "I'm going to do better than that," I said. "I'm going to make sure you don't have to take it anymore." Act 4. The reckoning of truth. Change, I've learned, rarely comes in thunderbolts. It comes in phone calls and paperwork, in conversations held in fluorescent-lit offices with people who have the power to move mountains if only someone asks them to. It comes in the small, unglamorous work of connecting dots that should have been connected long ago. I started with June Chen, told her what I'd seen, what I'd learned, what I wanted to do about it. She listened without judgment, which is a rare gift in this world, and when I finished, she pulled out a folder I hadn't seen before. "I've been watching that family too," she admitted, "but Marcus was so careful, so quiet. I didn't have anything concrete to work with." She slid the folder across her desk. "Here, this is the number for the district's family services coordinator, and this is the food bank that works with the elementary school. They might be able to help with the paperwork problem." Within a week, Marcus's mother had a caseworker. Within 2 weeks, The food stamp application had been untangled, the bureaucratic knot cut by someone who finally had the time to care. The school set up emergency meal support, breakfast and lunch for both boys, plus weekend backpacks stuffed with non-perishables to get them through the days when school wasn't there to catch them. But that wasn't all. What happened next? I still have trouble talking about it without my voice catching. I mentioned Marcus's situation in the faculty lounge, not in detail. I would never betray his trust like that, but in broad strokes. A student struggling, a family in need, the kind of story that exists in every school, in every town, if only we open our eyes to see it. Mrs. Patterson from the choir was the first to respond. "I've got casseroles in my freezer I'll never eat," she said. "Let me bring some in." Then Tom Rodriguez from the math department offered to cover tutoring for Marcus, pro bono, to help catch him up on the work he'd been too worried to focus on. The PE teacher, a gruff man named Bill Wilson, who'd barely spoken to me in 15 years, quietly slipped me a gift card to the grocery store. "For the family," he mumbled. "Tell them it's from a friend." The ripples spread beyond the faculty. Parents who'd heard whispers of a struggling family started leaving donations at the front office, coats that no longer fit their own children, boots still sturdy despite a season of wear. The PTA organized a fund earmarked for families facing unexpected hardship. No names attached, no charity that could sting. One afternoon, about a month after my conversation with Marcus, I found him waiting outside my classroom door. He was holding something in his hands, a piece of paper, folded and refolded until the creases had worn soft. "Mr. Holloway," he said, and there was something different in his voice, something lighter. "I wanted to show you something." He unfolded the paper. It was a drawing, the kind of art that only a first grader can create, all bright colors and wobbly lines and pure, unfiltered joy. It showed two figures holding hands, stick-thin arms and circle heads. Above them, in careful letters that leaned drunkenly to the right, were the words, "My brother Marcus is my hero." "Jalen made it," Marcus said. "He wanted you to have it, because you helped us." He paused, and I saw him struggling with something. "He's eating now, every day. He doesn't ask any more if there's going to be dinner. He just trusts that there will be." I took the drawing, held it like it was made of glass. "This," I said, and my voice wasn't entirely steady, "this is the best thing anyone has ever given me." Marcus smiled then. A real smile, not the careful, neutral expression he'd worn like armor since September. It transformed his face, made him look his age for the first time since I'd started watching. Made him look like a kid who was finally allowed to be a kid. "Mr. H," he said, and yes, he used the nickname, the one I'd pretended not to hear. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Why did you help us? You could have just reported me. That's what teachers are supposed to do, right? Follow the rules?" I considered the question, thought about the easy answers and the honest ones, decided Marcus had earned the latter. "When I was your age," I told him, "my family went through something similar. We didn't have much. Some months we had less than that. And I remember how it felt. The fear, the shame, the way hunger becomes this constant presence you can't escape." I met his eyes. "But I also remember the people who helped. A teacher who bought me lunch and pretended she'd gotten an extra by mistake. A neighbor who always made too much dinner and needed someone to take the leftovers. They never made me feel small for needing help. They just helped." Marcus nodded slowly, processing this. "So you helped us because someone helped you?" "I helped you," I said, "because that's what we're supposed to do. Not follow rules, follow people. See them, really see them, And when they're struggling, reach out a hand. He was quiet for a moment. Then, I want to be a teacher someday. Yeah? Yeah, he nodded firmly. So I can do what you did. See kids who are struggling. Help them. Something in my chest expanded. Hope, maybe, or pride, or just the simple, profound gratitude of knowing that kindness, once planted, can grow into something far larger than its seed. Marcus, I said, I think you already are. Act 5, the trail behind us. It's spring now. The oak tree outside my window is thick with new leaves, that particular shade of green that exists only in April, when the world is young again. The snow has melted from the parking lot, revealing the cracked asphalt beneath, and the children have traded their heavy coats for light jackets and bare arms. Marcus Cole sits in the third row now. He moved up from the back of the room sometime around February, though I never asked him why. He participates in class discussions, turns in his homework on time. Last week, he raised his hand to answer a question about symbolism in To Kill a Mockingbird, and his analysis was sharp enough to make the other students sit up and pay attention. His grandmother came home from the hospital in January. The dialysis is hard on her, 3 times a week hooked up to a machine that does what her body can no longer do. But she's home. She's alive. And Marcus tells me she makes dinner now on the nights his mother works late. Simple things, beans and rice, grilled cheese sandwiches, the kind of food that fills both stomach and soul. Jalen won his class spelling bee. Marcus brought me the ribbon, a cheap blue satin thing with gold letters, and made me promise to display it somewhere I could see it every day. It hangs on my bulletin board now, next to the drawing that says, "My brother Marcus is my hero." Some of the other kids have asked about it. I tell them it's a reminder of why we do this work. The story got out eventually. Not the details, those belong to Marcus and his family, but the broad strokes. The whisper network of teachers and parents pieced together enough to understand that something meaningful had happened, that a child had been struggling and the community had come together to help. What surprised me was the response. Not just at Jefferson, but across the district. Other teachers started looking harder at their quiet students, the ones who kept their heads down and their needs hidden. The school board approved funding for expanded meal programs, including summer coverage for families who couldn't fill the gap when school wasn't in session. A local church started a weekend food ministry specifically for children identified by school counselors. One small act. That's all it takes sometimes. One person choosing to see, to care, to act. And the ripples spread outward like circles on still water, touching shores you never knew existed. I've been teaching for 23 years now. 23 years of chalk dust and fluorescent lights. But this year I remembered why I started. Not for the curriculum, not for the grades, not for the performance reviews or the pension or the summers off. I started because someone once believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. Because a teacher looked at a hungry, scared kid from the wrong side of town and saw not a problem to solve, but a person worth knowing. The bell is about to ring. I can hear the students gathering in the hallway, their voices rising and falling in the eternal rhythm of youth. In a few minutes, they'll flood through my door. 30 faces, 30 stories, 30 sets of struggles I may never fully understand. But I'll try. God help me, I'll try. Because that's what we do, isn't it? We show up. We pay attention. We ask the questions no one else thinks to ask. And when we find someone struggling, we reach out a hand. Not because it's our job, but because it's our calling, our privilege, our sacred responsibility to the future we won't live to see. Marcus catches my eye as he walks through the door, gives me a small nod, almost imperceptible, before sliding into his seat. It's our secret language now, that nod, an acknowledgement of something shared, something precious, something that changed us both in ways we're still discovering. "Good morning, everyone," I say, as I've said 10,000 times before. Let's get started. The lesson today is about voice, how writers find their authentic tone, how they learn to speak their truth without apology. It's funny, in a way. I've been teaching this lesson for years, but I don't think I really understood it until now. Voice isn't just about writing, it's about living. It's about having the courage to say what needs to be said, to see what needs to be seen, to act when action is required, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's hard. Jalen's drawing rustles slightly in the draft from the ventilation system. My brother Marcus is my hero. I look at those crooked letters, those bright colors, and I think about all the heroes we never recognize, the quiet ones, the hidden ones, the 12-year-old boys stealing granola bars to feed their little brothers. We're all heroes, I think. Every single one of us. We just need someone to notice. The sun climbs higher outside my window, casting long rectangles of light across the worn linoleum floor. In the old oak tree, a cardinal is singing, its red plumage brilliant against the new green leaves. Spring has come again to Jefferson Middle School, as it always does, as it always will. A reminder that even in the hardest winters, warmth returns. I think about Marcus's words from that day in October. I want to be a teacher someday, so I can do what you did. See kids who are struggling. Help them. Somewhere in this building, right now, another child is carrying a weight they shouldn't have to carry alone. Another family is struggling in silence, too proud or too scared to ask for help. Another story is waiting to be seen, if only someone will look. I pick up my chalk, take a breath, and I begin. Because that's what teachers do. We begin. Again and again and again, we begin. And sometimes, if we're lucky, if we're paying attention, if we're brave enough to really see, we get to watch a miracle unfold. Not the dramatic kind, not lightning from heaven or parting seas, the quieter kind. The kind that happens in cafeterias and bus stops, in faculty lounges and counselors' offices. The kind that starts with one person noticing and ends with a whole community caring. The kind that reminds us, in the end, what we're all here for.